Hello, I'm David Harris, and this is Defending Israel. My guest is one of the most accomplished Israeli politicians and diplomats. Gilad Erdan has held at least 7 ministerial posts in various Israeli governments. He's also been the ambassador to the United States, and he's currently the ambassador to the United Nations, which has to be one of the most challenging and difficult diplomatic posts anywhere at this moment in time. Gilad, welcome to Defending Israel.
Thank you for having me, David.
You have a very busy schedule, you've made time, and it's appreciated. October 7th made your already difficult job vastly more difficult. Talk to us, if you would, about what's happened since October the 7th through the prism of your work at the United Nations.
So, obviously, after we realized that we suffered the biggest atrocity since the Holocaust, such a tragedy, and we lost around 1,400 people and 240 Israelis were abducted, I realized that now my role is to try and preserve the international support in accomplishing the one and only the one main goal that needs to be achieved in the military operation, obviously other than bringing back our hostages, which is eradicating Hamas terrorist capabilities in such a way that we know that when we say never again this time, we truly means never again, and they won't have the capabilities to commit such atrocities again. And we knew, like it happened all the time, the world loves us or support us when they see, there's a famous book, Dead Jews.
Dead Jews.
It's very sad to say it, but they tend to forget very quickly. And once we start to, the realization of our right of self-defense, which means eradicating Hamas terror capabilities, and we know what Hamas will do because they will try to increase the civilian casualties in Gaza. That's why they embedded themselves within and under the civilian population. Immediately we'll see the shift, not only in the media, but also, as you know, David, very well, in the UN and in the Security Council. So my main role is to try and preserve the support, to expose the double standards that many countries try to apply against Israel, to expose Hamas's use of the civilian population and facilities in order for terror attacks. So these are the things that I'm focused on since then. Until now, we should be grateful to the American administration because it's mainly thanks to them, the international support that we receive. But every day it gets more and more complicated because of the hypocrisy at the UN, because of the failed leadership that we see there.
Okay, we're going to come to all of this.
I'm sure.
But am I correct in saying, Gilad, that the United Nations General Assembly has never, ever, not before or after October 7th, ever condemned Hamas by name?
Yeah, that's true.
Help the JBS viewers understand why.
Why? Because when the UN was founded, it was after the Holocaust and after World War II, and there were only 57 member states at the time. By the way, the real occupiers at the time, like the UK and France and Portugal or Spain, that's how the State of Israel, not that we were established thanks to them, but the fact that it got a majority, Kaftet November, November 29th, 1947, the partition plan was mainly because there were only 57 member states. Today there are 193 member states at the UN. Most of them, more than 50%, are non-democratic. Cuba, Venezuela, others every country has the same vote. United States of America, Iran, or St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they all have one vote. And 1/3 of the UN are Muslim countries, almost 1/3, 56 countries. And they vote almost automatically when we talk about the General Assembly to support the Palestinians. And it doesn't matter on what, because they always, because of their internal politics, and they're afraid to face internal uprisings in their countries, so they vote with the Palestinians, even if discreetly or personally they can tell me, yeah, you are right, and they know that Hamas, that is like sort of a subsidiary of the Muslim Brotherhood, is endangering them no less than is endangering us, but they cannot show it publicly. And so there's an institutionalized bias at the UN against Israel, as long as this is the structure, and that's how the UN was built, and especially the General Assembly, as you pointed out.
So in other words, for our viewers, Hamas can invade, can murder, can behead, can mutilate, can rape, can kidnap, with all the evidence in front of the world, and a majority of the member states of the United Nations will still not condemn Hamas by name.
Absolutely, sadly, tragically, and that's exactly what happened. A few weeks ago, the General Assembly was convened, and 120 member states supported a resolution that didn't even mention Hamas, let alone condemning
So
Hamas.
120 is about 2/3, almost 2/3 of the member states.
Almost 2/3.
Could not bring themselves to even mention Hamas.
Exactly. But by the way, the same goes to the Security Council. I mean, when you have this divide between, and many years ago we had the Cold War. Now, since the war in Ukraine started, the Security Council is I think more paralyzed than ever, because whatever Russia wants to advance will be vetoed by the Western world, and vice versa. And and the Russians, we have the new, I have to be politically correct, but people in the past used to talk about axis of evil. So we see this new alliances between Iran, Russia, China, others. I mean, these interests are causing the Security Council to be more paralyzed, and they're not able to pass any effective resolutions.
So Gilad, I remember many years ago the notion shmum, sort of taking the Hebrew version of the UN and playing off of it and kind of dismissing it. Who cares about the UN? Shmum. It doesn't
It's
matter.
like Joe Schmo, as you say.
Okay. So is there a case to be made for the UN today? And why should Israel care if the organization cannot even condemn Hamas by name?
It's a great question that I've been asking myself this question almost every other week.
And what's your answer?
My answer is that we always must remember that Ben Gurion, when he gave the UN this nickname that you mentioned, Shmum, he was right. And it was a discussion about, by the way, it was held in 1955.
Okay.
Yes, in the Israeli government. It was again about the terror attacks from Gaza. Ben Gurion, as Minister of Defense, thought that the right thing to do is to invade Gaza and to cleanse it out from
once again, Gaza.
Yeah, from the terrorists. And Moshe Sharet, who at the time was the prime minister, told him, well, Israel cannot expand its borders as it likes to do, because without the UN, we would never have a Jewish state. So Ben Gurion told him, nonsense, shmum. The state of Israel wasn't established thanks to the UN. It was established thanks to the thousands and millions of courageous Jews who fought,
who built the state.
Yeah, who fought for it, who built the state. So he was right. When it comes to security, the Shmum, we will do whatever is needed, regardless of what the UN will decide. We will continue to fight for our future. But since, and I'm coming back now to your question, since we live now in the internet era, and everything that is happening in New York, the UN, doesn't stay in New York. Our enemies, and today they don't fight us only on the conventional battlefield. They try to isolate us. They try to convince the young generation that we are murderers, we are the biggest human rights abusers, that we should be isolated, that we should be boycotted. So they're taking the decisions or the lies that are being spread or decided at the UN, and they exploit them in other arenas. They go to the International Criminal Court to try to press charges against our officers and soldiers. They go to the board of directors of naive American companies like Ben & Jerry's or Airbnb and try to tell them, how can you still work in Israel when the UN said this or that? Israel should be boycotted. So they try to weaponize UN decisions against Israel. So if we are not there, this vacuum is not going to help us. Someone, it can be me or any other person, must fight there, must expose the lies and the hypocrisy, present the facts. It's not that I'm not naive. It's not going to get us a majority there soon, anytime soon, but it can minimize the damages.
Gilad, you got a lot of media attention when you appeared in the UN wearing the yellow Star of David. You also got a little bit of criticism from Yad Vashem for wearing the Star of David as opposed to the Israeli flag, the sign of the new Jew, the new Israel. Why did you decide to wear the Star of David, and what reaction did you get in the UN itself?
Well, first of all, I accept criticism, and not that I like it, like any other human being, but I think that right now we should focus on our enemies, and sadly we have enough external enemies to fight against, and I'm not going to comment. I can explain the viewers why did I decide to do it. As you mentioned, this distorted body, the UN, and also the Security Council, they have convened, I think, almost 10 times since the war started, since October 7th. They still did not condemn Hamas. They continue to focus only on the humanitarian situation in Gaza, as if our abducted babies, Holocaust survivors, women are like a footnote, something that you just say at the end of your speech, and they should be released on empty words.
As an afterthought.
Yes, exactly. Like you see that it's not really important for them. So I am trying everything to shock them, to try to draw their attention to the real things that needs to be discussed. And by the way, it's important to emphasize, it wasn't the yellow star that Jews were wearing during the Holocaust. It didn't say Jude. It wasn't the one to mark Jews. It said never again. It was aimed to tell them, say here what you want to say. Never again for us is an oath that we took, and we are going to implement it, meaning no ceasefire will continue until we crush and obliterate Hamas's terror capabilities, whatever you will say here. I'm not saying that I know how many of them were influenced, but I got many reactions coming from other ambassadors at the UN. I saw some people around the world who felt the need also to wear it, because they felt that, we were asking ourselves so many times, how did the Holocaust could happen? Of course it could have happened, of course, and it might happen again if we were not going to fight and be vocal. Thank God we have the State of Israel today, because today in the internet era, when Hamas filmed himself and the atrocities can be seen, during the Holocaust, there were rumors, some people denied the extent of the atrocities. Now it's for all the world to see, and still the world is paralyzed and is focusing on how to help these savages, these new modern Nazis, these ISIS-like terrorists.
You brought the son of one of the founders of Hamas to the United Nations.
The Green Prince. Musab Hassan Youssef.
Could he change minds? I mean, that's quite a remarkable witness to bring. I mean, he knew Hamas from the inside.
Yes.
Did it have any impact?
I think it did. Many dozens of ambassadors and other diplomats attended to our event, and my impression is that yes, he's very influential because, again, we're trying to explain inside the UN that it's not only, first of all, yeah, it's our security, but it's not only for Israel. Whoever still believes that there's a chance for reconciliation and peace with the Palestinians, maybe not today, maybe few years from now, but obviously they must understand that Hamas is the biggest obstacle for peace also for the Palestinians, because they're not only oppressing the Palestinians and using them as human shields, they're also they stick to their charter who says that Israel should be annihilated, and if Israel needs to be annihilated, no dialogue can be held with the Palestinian people. So if you listen to someone like him, the Green Prince, who grew up as to the family of one of the founders of Hamas, and you also watch the footage that we screened at the UN, so this combination gives you maybe the deep understanding of what Hamas truly is, the true nature of Hamas.
And to that point, Gilad, do you sense any greater understanding of Iran's role in the region among UN member states than before October 7th, or not?
Sadly, no. And it also, I think it also has some connection to the, maybe to the fundamental disagreements that we have with the administration. And don't get me wrong, we are grateful to the American administration, to the support that we received, to President Biden. Courage, really. It's not easy to support Israel these days,
Totally.
And we are grateful to him. But on Iran, because we know that Iran is the head of the octopus, we know that without Iran, they funded 93% of the terror budget of Hamas comes from Iran. They train them, they equip them, they give them the technology. Also Hezbollah, also the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Without them, it could never have happened. So it's not enough to fight the terrorist proxies, and now we see that the Houthis are joining. Also quite clear that they are coordinated with Iran. And look what's happening on our northern border. Obviously, again, one day after this war ends, any government in Israel wouldn't be allowed to exempt itself from the question, what are we going to do on our northern border? We have another Iranian proxy there,
and where there's
more dangerous, 5 times bigger than Hamas.
And Gilad, where there is a UN force, UNIFIL.
It's a joke.
So when people might propose that a future for Gaza includes a UN force, does it make any sense?
No, it doesn't. Even the Secretary General, I saw him, he answered on CNN that that's not something he thinks can be effective. And, UNIFIL is a joke. They can have good intentions. They are not the ones who would block and fight against the Hezbollah terrorists. And the international community lied to itself since 2006 when they upgraded UNIFIL. Now it has 11,000 soldiers, 5 ships. In 2006, Hezbollah had 10,000 missiles. Today they have 150,000 missiles under the nose of UNIFIL and other UN officials.
So much for that. But you mentioned the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
Yes.
And you very publicly criticized the Secretary General, I believe even calling for his resignation.
Yes.
Explain to the JBS viewers why.
Well, I thought that there's no need to explain it anymore, because if you are the leader of the organization that was founded, established in the wake of the Holocaust, and the main goal is to prevent atrocities, and you speak a day or two after the biggest atrocities that the Jewish people have suffered since the Holocaust, and after 1,400 people were slaughtered and mutilated and raped and murdered and abducted, and you say the words, it didn't happen in a vacuum, and you don't understand the meaning of what you're saying now, that this is like an understanding. Terror is terror and is terror. Nothing can explain the intentional slaughtering of a baby. Nothing. And if he said these words publicly, he cannot stay the leader, the Secretary General of the UN, even for one more minute. By the way, since then, he repeated, he doesn't even understand his mistake. He is still only focused on the situation in Gaza. He's on the humanitarian aid that in his eyes should enter to Gaza, but he's not doing almost anything to help us release the hostages, to hold Hamas accountable for the situation there. Whatever proof we are providing him, and I invited the military attaché from Washington to address him, to show him all the humanitarian aid that we are providing Gaza, all the proof that under hospitals Hamas has military command centers and hidden rockets and missiles. Nothing is helping to bring him to say that Hamas should be held accountable for the situation in Gaza.
And how do you explain it? Is it political expediency? Is it a blind spot? Is it ideology?
It can be.
Is it anti-Semitism?
It can be many things. I can't read his minds, but everything that happened in Gaza also happened under the nose of the UN and its agencies. I mean, UNRWA schools, where the children in Gaza learn anti-Semitism, or that the Jewish state should be wiped off the map, or all the summer camps, and we have all the proof. Again, all the summer camps where kids are being trained in Gaza, everything is being paid by the UN and its agencies. So if he hold Hamas accountable today, what does it mean about the history of the last 16, 17 years since Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza to the 1949 borders?
Gilad, you said something earlier about how there's often double talk in the UN. What people say publicly, how they vote publicly, is different from what they say to you privately. I'm sure you can't name names, though if you want to name names, this is a great moment to do so.
Yes.
But explain to us some of that double talk. What are people telling you privately, including, by the way, some of the Arab countries with which Israel does have good contacts?
It needs to be understood that since the UN is so convoluted and it's comprised of 193 member states, so obviously you cannot hold discussions with 193 or make decisions. So the UN is divided into either regional groups, like the European Union,
right,
or religious groups, like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation or the Arab League. So many times, even though we have great bilateral relations with a specific country, be it a country that is a member of the European Union or Latin America, or the Arab League, but their group decides sometimes to vote this way or that way because of other interests, because they want to get funds from the UN, they have their candidate they want them to get elected to a very important, influential position at the UN. So they're coming to me and they say, look, Ambassador Erdan, yeah, we know you're right about Iran here and there, or when they need to vote on the Palestinian package, but if we vote with you here, we'll be punished by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 56 member states, so then we're going to lose our chances to get elected next year to the Security Council. So that's why I say that there's an institutional bias at the UN, and many times Arab countries who know that, as I said, that Hamas is their enemy as well, they cannot say it publicly. They have to vote against their long-term interest because of their short-term political interest. And that's very sad. That's why the UN can be maybe a body that we can facilitate, advance consensual resolutions to fight COVID. Yeah, we need to distribute vaccines throughout the world to vaccinate all citizens of the world. Yes, but when there's no consensus, when there's a political dispute, the UN has lost its legitimacy, credibility, and relevancy.
Gilad, we only have a short time left, unfortunately, but you've spoken more than once about the U.S. role, and you've praised President Biden. And we're all conscious of the fact that the United States has a veto power in the Security Council, and that can help Israel at any moment in time. But tell our viewers, if you could, a few other countries that have really stood out for you as being principled, and not just in private but in public. Who would you mention?
Out of all member states or a Security Council?
Let's say out of all member states. I mean, who are the countries that pop to mind?
The countries that are our closest allies at the UN are Hungary, Czechia, the Czech Republic, we used to call them. Some other countries from Eastern Europe. I have to say it again, even though it's not very politically correct. Where you have big Muslim communities, you see that the political interest is being influenced, even though these countries they share with us formally the same Western values, but you see them criticizing more and more. Then they feel the need to show like a balance position.
So take a country like Germany, where the chancellor has been very strong in articulating Israel's right to self-defense, standing by it. Does that translate into the UN as well?
Yes, it is. It is. But you asked me to rank, like to give the countries who are like our closest allies. So but obviously Canada, Australia, now it needs to be it remains to be seen with the new government.
Britain,
Germany, the UK, of course, yes, countries that we share the same values. Also, some countries in Latin America that are influenced by evangelical Christianity. Mm-hmm. And
we shouldn't forget the Pacific Island nations as well that have always stood by Israel.
They should be praised anytime, yeah.
I wish we had more time because we're just scratching the surface, but dear JBS viewers, you've just met an Israeli diplomat in the hot seat, one of the most difficult positions anywhere for Israel and one of the most important. I want to thank Gilad Erdan for joining us here in the JBS studio. This is David Harris defending Israel, and remember, Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilad.
We will prevail, God willing.
We count on that.